Imagine walking along the coast and stumbling across a stone house, swallowed almost entirely by a massive, blindingly white dune of sand. It looks like a desert shipwreck. But the story of how this place ended up buried is a historical puzzle. How did a bustling settlement get erased from the map by a few thousand hungry rabbits? These limestone walls belonged to the Eucla Telegraph Station. Opened in 1877, it served as Australia's most vital communications hub for the 19th century. To understand why it was built here, you have to look at the landscape. This is the Nullarbor Plain, a brutal, waterless stretch of earth. Before the station was built, sending a message from Perth to Adelaide meant putting a letter on a ship and waiting weeks. This line cut that time down to minutes. Eucla was a high-tech oasis, built to bridge the colonies using the technology of the day. Between the 1870s and 1920s, this patch of desert was a bustling community. You had dozens of people living and working here, maintaining a fully functional town right on the edge of the Great Australian Bight. At its peak, up to 100 people lived here. They built sturdy limestone houses, a local school for the children, a police station, and even a long wooden jetty to receive supply ships from the ocean. The heart of the town was the telegraph station. Here, operators sat at their desks, constantly tapping out and receiving an endless flow of manual messages crossing the country. But they ran into a strange political roadblock. The operators from Western Australia used International Morse code, while the operators from South Australia used American Morse code. The two systems couldn't talk to each other. They had successfully strung a wire across thousands of miles of wilderness, but colonial politics created a technological wall right inside the station. To solve this, they used a physical workaround. As this diagram shows, operators from both colonies sat in the exact same room, but they were divided by a solid wooden partition. Even though they were sitting only a few feet apart, the two sides of the room ran on different time zones. If a message came in from Perth, the Western Australian operator had to listen to the code, translate it, and write the entire message out by hand on a slip of paper. Then he would slide that piece of paper through a small slot in the wooden partition, the boundary hole, so the operator on the other side could translate it into the second code and send it on to Adelaide. At the time, Australia's most advanced communication network relied entirely on sliding pieces of paper through a wooden board. This manual system worked for decades, but the real threat to Eucla was biological. In the 1890s, a massive rabbit plague swept across the region. Millions of rabbits descended on the coastal sandhills. They stripped the dunes bare, eating leaves and digging up the roots of native vegetation that held the soil together. This cross-section shows the result. For millennia, root systems pinned the sand in place. Once the rabbits destroyed the plants, the dunes became loose, flowing sand. The fierce, howling winds of the Great Australian Bight caught this loose sand, turning the dunes into a slow-moving wall that marched inland toward the town. By the early 1900s, the sand was swallowing the settlement. It buried fences, piled up against sandstone buildings, and forced families to rescue headstones from the Pioneer Cemetery before they were lost. The final blow came in 1929, when a new telegraph line was built further north alongside the railway. With its economic purpose gone and the sand encroaching, the coastal town was abandoned. This vital communications link was defeated not by a machine, but by a biological chain reaction that stripped the land of its stability. Eucla didn't disappear entirely. The community simply retreated, rebuilding 4 kilometers to the north. Today, the modern township is perched high up on the limestone escarpment, safely away from the crawling dunes and right alongside the air highway. Back on the coast, the ruins are a playground for the wind. Depending on the season, a storm might bury the walls to the roofline or blow the sand away to expose the original doorways and lintels. These ruins stand as a quiet monument to a moment in history when the local ecology proved more powerful than the wires connecting the continent.